Hello, welcome again to ABL Television. This is Genevieve Ama, Keeping It Real show. So again, this show is about keeping it real because everything we talk about is keeping it real. What I analyze is keeping it real. What you see is what you get. There's no pretension here. The focus is on Africa. So this is part 2, the follow-up of my introduction. The series is going to be focused on the continent of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. So those of you that haven't seen the first episode, that was just introduction to the new show of Keeping It Real with Genevieve Ama. First of all, I would like you to subscribe, like, and most importantly, this show is interactive. It's not just me speaking. I'm not just speaking at you, I'm speaking with you. So send your comments on YouTube or Facebook. Send your analysis of the continent of Africa, why the continent is rich. Africa is not poor, you know. But like Kwame Nkrumah said, Africa is not poor, but the people are poor. Why? African leaders, why are you not focusing on prospering your people? Rather, the resources and the riches of the continent are being used for your own selfish reasons. And there has been many good African leaders, and once they're in power, for some reason they don't last. Where is your loyalty? What has happened to this race of people, the African continent? The continent that was first brought on the world first. Africa existed before every other world. If you don't believe me, do your research. So, today's topic, today's title is, why is there a lack of development in Africa? And I'm not going to speak too long today. I'm just going to go straight to the point. First of all, I want to thank you all for your loyalty, for following ABL Television. I want to thank you for allowing me on your mobile, on your tablets, in your sitting room, if you're watching it at home or anywhere else. I want to also thank God for allowing me to stand here and present to you all, to giving me good health to stand here and speak on the subject of focus on Africa. Why is there a lack of development in Africa? And I've written some, and I covered it in my first introduction, my first show. Definitely corruption, and I've mentioned it, corruption. There is corruption everywhere. Some of you are saying, but there is corruption even in Europe or USA or Asia. Yes, there are corruption, but guess what? Have you seen their infrastructure? Their roads are fixed, their taps are running, they have electricity. And Africa, a continent, we have free sun, and yet electricity is not 100% flowing. Water is not 100% flowing. Roads are not fixed. So yes, there's corruption, but even if there's corruption and there's evidence of development, you don't mind so much. Secondly, is it a lack of vision? I'm not sure that is always a lack of vision. Some good African leaders have good vision. Kwame Nkrumah was ahead of his time. He had an amazing vision for the continent of Africa to bring the whole of the continent as one. The EU, what the Europeans are calling European Union, which is short for EU, they got the idea from Kwame Nkrumah. And if you think I'm wrong, prove me wrong or prove me right. And for some reason, there must have been a fear. What can I say? Many of us think that the rest of the world, the West, do not want Africa to develop. Sure, I can subscribe to that. I can agree that perhaps that could be it. There's some kind of political thing behind the scene, secretly making sure that the African leaders are puppets rather than having love for their people, Look at China, and I'm always going to bring up China. Sure, people say that China has humanitarian issues and they're autocratic and it's one state, they're doing this and they're doing that. I'm sure lots of blood has been shed on that land, just like there's blood shed on every nation, but that's for God to judge. But I'm looking at the fast development of China. They locked their doors. There was a time when I was doing some kind of research many years ago. China was quiet, and suddenly they emerged, started trading with Africa, and now look at them. Everybody's seeing China as first world. Some people, some scholars are actually even saying that China's economy, and probably is, I need to look at the statistics on that, that is even better than the USA. Don't quote me on that one, but many scholars see China and USA on the same par level, because that's where China came from, the back, and now they're in front. China doesn't have the resources that Africa does. China has been reliant on the resources of Africa to give their people prosperity. So African leaders, I'm using the word again, baffling. If you are an African leader, I'm not going to stand here. Many people are so frustrated, then they'll start insulting the African leaders. I'm not going to do that. I had a long talk to myself. I'm just as frustrated. So I've decided that maybe this show will encourage African leaders. I'll give you confidence. I will encourage you. I will remind you that you don't come into power just to make money. I'm seeing something. I'm bringing up Ghana, and every now and then I would speak English and also switch it up and speak Tree. Say, I wish Ghana. Ghana, Obiape Ghana, Sem. Ghana, in my first introductory, Ghana, Obiako Ghana. Economically is developing. Ghana was being seen as the African Miami. The Miami in US, the African version was in Ghana. Sisi Ghana, a call form. Leaders come into power just to amass wealth, because I've analyzed something. It looks like every leader, majority of the leaders are saying, well, the previous leader came in there, got the money, was corrupted, made money for themselves. So why do I have to come in as a new leader? Why don't I do the same thing? No. African leaders, let me tell you something. I analyze a lot. We're all spiritual. We're all able to discern. If you're able, I discern a lot. What I'm seeing is that if you are a leader and you bring suffering onto the people, you're bringing curses onto yourself and generation. Trust me. I was in Ghana recently, last year, September. People are suffering. When I become a billionaire, I'll definitely be helping my people. How can a rich country like Africa have the people live in such poverty, such suffering? And wherever Africans are, Africans and African descendants are, there's always persecution. Fix our continent. Leaders, it's up to you. India was also colonized, and yet India, one of my professors said that India has probably more poverty, more poor people in India than there are in Africa. But guess what? India is now being seen as a first world country, not third world, first world country. What does that tell you? And I've also seen something under the sun, as they say. Anytime that there's a disaster in India, they're not interested in receiving aid from the West. Indian government will always say, no, we don't need your aid. We will take care of our issues. We'll take care of our people. African leaders are always begging. Are you not embarrassed? Are you always going to beg from the West? Begging, you become a beggar. And you are slave to your master. When you beg and you take and you take, you become a slave to the lender. That's the word, to the lender. So, why is there lack of development in Africa? I've made a few lists. Corruption is definitely one of them. Lack of vision. Kwame Nkrumah had vision, but I'm not seeing any vision right now. especially in my country, in Ghana, and neighboring countries. And if there are, then let me see it. Leaders will come into power. One of the worst one is leaders will come into power and they will give their friends and family important positions. Finance minister in our country, Ghana, right now is the cousin of the leader, has run the country down, has run the country completely to zero. Friends and family are all in high positions. I mean, they should show me their qualification. I'm sure most of them probably don't have qualification. They do not have the skill, because if you have the skill in that specific position as finance minister, you would know how to resolve the financial situation and economic situation. What they do, another thing under the sun, is the benefits. Africa is seen as poor, the people are poor, and yet somehow the leaders are able to drive fancy cars, fancy jeeps, their children, school fees are paid, free petrol, free this. Somebody even told me that even their clothing are subsidized. I wonder, I must do a research. Does that happen in the United Kingdom? What benefits do the MPs and the leader of United Kingdom, what benefits? I'll research and come and discuss it. But in countries like the African countries, some of the MPs in this country, I see them ride bicycles. They do not ride in fancy cars. So another analysis that I've seen, that it seems to me that when the English and the Europeans entered the continent of Africa, they colonized our countries, right? And they stole our resources, used our people for cheap labor to develop their country. Do you know what I've analyzed? I think our leaders are no different. The Europeans came and brought suffering to our people, and our African leaders are doing the same. They come into power and they steal, and they steal with no compassion for the people. It's just themselves, their family and friends. Wouldn't say a museo, wouldn't say a curse pa, and I did to woman any with generation so. Residia and Crofo Su Ghana. Su Ghana. Hey, listen, make up a bench on Ghana for. Stop voting by tribe. Stop tribal voting. Do not vote. You can belong to your party, but if the leader in your party is not doing good for the country, don't vote for that leader. It's not. You cannot. We cannot be living by tribal means and voting by tribal means. That has to stop. So that's another reason why there's lack of. There's many factors, but because of time, I'm just giving you some of the basic. People that are in positions to try and give positions to the wrong people. So that's not helping the country develop. So I listened to must have been a leader in Singapore. And I listened to his video. And he said that the success, so I'm giving an example of how Ghana and the rest of failing nations in Africa can succeed. This man in this video clip said that one of the leaders, one of the success in Singapore was based on meritocracy. And he said the secret of Singapore's success is the meritocracy is basically somebody is selecting people according to their merit, according to what they have achieved, according to their talent. The success of Singapore, the leader made sure that he's selected not by friends, not by family, but by what you can do, what skills you're coming up with. If you're a finance minister, what are you bringing economically? How can you resolve? If you're a finance infrastructure minister, how are you going to develop the road? It's not like the ones in Ghana right now. There are people there, they have no compassion, they're just there to milk the country and bring suffering. So that's one of the secrets of how Singapore, this leader and Singapore said that if developing countries can select specific talented leaders who cares about the country, wants to bring prosperity to their nations, wants to have pride. If you want to have pride in your country, you will do everything to make sure it's successful. You will not come in there and steal and make money for yourself. Those days, those things in those days must come to an end. And what another thing that's under the sun that baffles me, leaders, I'm looking at Ghana and also African, the sub-Saharan African. I will cover North, again and repeat, I will cover North Africa sometime in the series. But right now my focus is on these 3 nations within the African continent. They would prefer to give contracts to foreigners. Whereas the foreign people that you're giving contracts to, for example, China would give contract to their own people so that wealth comes into China and prosperity into their people. And it's right to do that. Whereas our people, the African leaders, even in Ghana, they will give contracts to foreigners because of corruption. Where is your compassion? Where is your dream? As an African leader, don't you want to walk the streets of this earth and feel proud that you have a developed country? Infrastructure is working, electricity is working, the people, the youth have jobs, there is peace in the country. If there's an African leader that is watching this, I'm not going to abuse you. I'm here to give you confidence. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up to the hegemonic states. Countries that have got more power, economic power, that is perhaps bullying you behind the scene. Stand up. Guess what? The world needs Africa's resource. Get confidence. Sit down. Analyze. Think for yourself. Have vision. How can I help my people? China made a vow that they're going to make their people millionaires and billionaires. And it's true. There are billionaires in China. There are millionaires in China. And Ghana, as a leader, new incoming leader, present leader, what's your vision for the people? Even if you go without food for one day, for 1 week, or for one day, and instead of eating some of that food, that expensive food, you gave some of that money to people that are suffering, that is the beginning. Africa is not poor, let me repeat. We've got to stop saying Africa is poor. Africa, we know, the Europeans know, the Western world know, everybody knows that Africa is not poor. They use the media to stereotype. We know Africa is not poor. The people are poor because of lack of management, lack of leadership, corruption, no transparency. This has to come to an end. I'm here to encourage you, leaders of Africa, change. If you're in business with somebody in the Western world and they want to make you a puppet and they want to undermine your nation, you need to back off and do business with somebody else that will help your country develop. I was going to cover some of the successes of Asia. If Asia can do it, why can't Africa? Help us walk the streets with our heads up high. People are escaping from the continent because of hunger, no jobs. Has to come to an end. I'm going to see you next week and we're going to continue this discussion. Please send in your analysis, send in your questions. You can email me and we can discuss more. So in conclusion, well, there's never going to be a conclusion because it's going to go on and on and on and on and on. This show, this conversation is the beginning. We're going to find a way to make the continent better. I am tired of seeing the suffering of our people, of the Africans. I'm tired of seeing it. People don't have to suffer. They don't have to suffer. We just need a leader that is conscious, that has compassion, that has an ambition to develop their country, that is proud to develop their country. So this is Genevieve Amma, Keeping It Real Show. See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and have a nice day, have a nice week, have a nice night wherever you're watching this show from.